Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cuppa.tv. It is Cookie here, and welcome to 2025. This is our first live show this year, and boy, do we have a big year planned for all of you. New shows, new formats, new hosts, even something that is going to be appearing in around June this year, which I can't wait to share with all of you. Cuppa is on an absolute mission at the moment to turn more moments into positive movements of change. And we are destined to do that with everything that we're doing in the world, and also what we're going to be sharing with the world through the conversations that we're bringing to life today and in the future. Before I kick it off, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connections to lands, water and community. I want to pay my respects to them, their elders, and past, present and emerging. And also want to say thanks to all the First Nations wisdom and storytellers that have appeared here on Cuppa throughout the last few years. Well, today's show is all around future generation protection, and I can't wait to welcome in my guest very, very soon. Her name is Taylor Dee Hawkins, and she's an award-winning social entrepreneur, leadership specialist, driving future-driven policy innovation and social impact. She's the managing director of Foundations for Tomorrow, championing intergenerational fairness and intergenerational fairness, and a global voice at the UN World Economic Forum, Co-op, and shaping long-term solutions. She's an advisor, speaker, change maker, empowering leaders to build better futures. I want to welcome her in right now. Taylor, welcome to Cuppa. How are you?
Even better for being here, and I am lucky to be privy to what's coming in June, and I'm very excited on behalf of everyone watching this. There's a lot to come, so it's all very exciting.
Well, there's a lot of things that we're working on, as you know, a lot of new connections being made. And one of those beautiful connections has been the fact that I've been able to meet you and hear everything and the mission that you are on. We were connected a while ago, and, you know, I think it came at a really important time where I was really evaluating, you know, what Cuppa's journey is and how we want to make a difference. When we sat down and spoke, you spoke about your vision, your mission, in what you're trying to create in the world. And I just saw the instant understanding that, you know, when we do things together, when we partner, when we collaborate, when we co-design, when we look at things from a place of hope and not fear, we can really shape the foundations of the world. And in particular here in Australia, you can't look too far at the moment to know that there is a lot of things going on. There's a lot of big topic areas filtering through. And for today, I'm very excited to be able to have you as one of as our first guest for 2025. How are you feeling, Taylor? You ready?
I'm ready, and I think I share the resonance. I know when we met not too long ago, the mission that Cuppa is here for is just so at the heart of everything that I've seen that we need with the leaders I've gotten to engage with. We're in a crisis of confidence and hope, and we need to be able to bring that back. So I feel incredibly privileged to be here and be part of that.
Well, Taylor, I want you to, I gave a little bit of a spiel at the top around your background, etc., and probably stuffed up a little bit of it as well, but that's okay. What sparked your passion for intergenerational fairness, and what drives, who you are and what you do and the work that you do today?
Yeah, and look, contrary to the kind of work I've ended up doing, I'm a die-hard introvert, and I never get used to, people doing the spiel about me before I start talking. But it was very generous. But I think I started as a leadership development specialist. I still am that at my core, facilitator. I love working with leaders, and started in the private sector. And it was about 5 years ago that I decided to start a hobby that has since gotten way out of control, which was to start a nonprofit. I've been volunteering for 15 years, so it's always been a huge part of my life, that sort of grassroots community work, trying to help make the world a better place with every little bit that I can. But it was always very much like direct into community, not working on the system. And then in about 2020, coincidentally, gave me a lot of free time because this happened around COVID. We ran a national youth consultation hearing from 10,000 young people. And that is, I believe, Mission Australia might have beat us on this one at this point, but the largest national youth consultation run by young people. And we took those results very enthusiastically to Parliament House. I think I was 27 at the time. and had great faith that because we'd broken all these records and we had these really strong insights that we'd see change, or we'd see some sort of commitment or some sort of strong response. And much to the disenchantment of me at the time, we got very little response to that work. And I am not someone who gives up very easily. So my response to that was to say, okay, there's clearly a systemic problem here that's meaning that we can't get the traction that we want. And that can't be isolated to just Australia. So I made a spreadsheet of every country in the world and worked down one at a time, and I mean every country, and saw what are they doing about intergenerational collaboration? What are they doing about short-term thinking, which seems to be the thing that we saw come through the most in the submissions of the young people we worked with. Yes, that it was climate, it was housing, it was mental health that they were worried about, because the consultation was all about how do we create a more just, equitable and sustainable Australia for the future. But the big theme we saw is that people didn't feel that their leaders either wanted to or were well equipped to plan for the long-term future. And that big spreadsheet led me to finding out about the Future Generations policy movement. Now, this year, I would say 2025, it's become kind of a cool thing to talk about, the future generations, intergenerational thinking. Even the PM recently said it's the biggest challenge facing young people is intergenerational inequity. But, a couple of years ago, I was the crazy lady running around Parliament House banging the Future Generations drum, people looking at me like I was a bit of an alien. But in doing that, what we found is that there's a huge opportunity here in Australia, not just because we have the ability to create really innovative policy that allows us to reach past this short-termism that is continuously delivering policies, whether that's climate, housing, cost of living, that are hurting current and future generations. But we're also home to the oldest living culture in the world who are experts in this. Future Generations policy is built into First Nations leadership. And so yeah, I'm deeply passionate because not only do I think that we need this desperately, both in public sector policy as well as in the private sector, but that we can do this and we can do it exceptionally well.
It's incredible that you've managed to be able to knock down so many doors to realize that this is such an important topic area that we need to be covering more about. And that conversation that you've done hasn't just happened locally here. Like, you've been part of the global conversation at the UN, the World Economic Forum, and the Global Parliamentary Congress. But what's been your biggest learning from these bigger, broader spaces that you've been in?
I think it would be twofold. Number one, coming from a leadership development background, and I've been really lucky to be in coaching or executive training environments with leaders from like some of the most recognized organizations in the world. Leaders need empathy. Like, it is not easy to be a leader today. The demands, the tension, the personal stress and mental health challenges of being a human alive today, full stop, let alone then what's required of you, depending on the type of leadership role you have. So the biggest thing I learned is, number one, most leaders just need a bit of empathy, not especially, coming from a youth movement perspective and then pairing that with a leadership development lens. I think I bring quite a unique perspective, which is like, yes, we need to demand change. It must be different. But that doesn't come with hitting leaders with a stick and telling them be better. It comes from saying, wow, I am confident that 99.9% of leaders enter their role because they want to make the world a better place. They want to serve their community. Do we have different definitions of that? Maybe, but they want that. It's the fact that we haven't set up the system for that to succeed. So number one, empathy first. Number two, if I can sneak in another one, is that no one has the rule book. And so the bandwidth that we have for innovation is far greater than anyone ever thinks. I think we assume that because it is the status quo, because it is how it's done, that that's how it must be. But every time I get into sort of a fancier or more senior room, I think this must be where they have all the answers. This must be where there's the map of how this is all going to work out. And sadly, I'm yet to enter the room where they have all the answers.
And is that mainly because, I'm trying to get to the core of this, right? So a lot of it comes down to the short-term thinking around what, governments are just trying to get in. So they just go at each other and they don't think about the long-term policies and the ideas that, can protect our children's in a First Nations lens. And that's what they say a lot of. But then is secondary that the fact that, individual leaders, no matter if it's a leader inside an organization, they're just too afraid to make the change because they don't want to get it wrong. Is it more about because we're trying to get it perfect than progress in your eyes?
I think there's unique flavors of it for each leader, but if you'll humor me, I'll tell a really quick story, which whenever I start it at speaking events, I always see the audience go, lean back a little bit because it doesn't make sense at the beginning. But when I was 15, I was a volunteer surf lifesaver at Whale Beach in Sydney. And they teach you how to approach someone who's drowning. And the way that they teach you to do that is to approach them with your leg up, ready to kick them if they try and climb on top of you and drown you. And that is because if you put someone in a situation where they do not feel that they have the ability to take care of themselves, or they don't feel that they can operate well, they will start to do things that are not in their normal character. They will start to do things that are not the right thing for them, for you in the long term, etc. And to be honest, I view it that our leaders are in a similar situation. They are set up in a situation that does not allow them to do well. So either they enter paralysis because they don't want to do the wrong thing. They start frenetically doing small things, hoping that it'll accumulate, but there's no sort of longer term strategy. Or because the system is so tough, they are then forced, and because there are so many great leaders who are facing into this challenge and trying to overcome this themselves, we are not sort of absolutely absent of great leadership. They then have to double, triple, quadruple down on a long shot bet to overcome the system they're operating in, which then leaves them personally at risk. And that takes a whole lot of courage and bravery that you just can't expect of every individual all the time. So I think there's a different flavor for everyone, but I do just think the bottom line is we need to work on changing the system and then being empathetic with the leaders currently operating within the system as it stands to say, it's a human response to start having, less than ideal interventions in the face of a system that's like not quite set up for what we need.
It also feels, and I don't know, you can tell me I'm wrong here as well, and that's okay, but it just feels that we're not under one unified voice of wanting to do something. There's so many individual people on their own quest, and many of those individuals are on a great quest, but it's more noise. Like, where's the uniformity in our approach in how we tackle this? Is that something that you see as well?
For me, that this is part of a bigger, whatever faith, spirituality you attest to. I think that there is a need for us to lean into the shared human experience and lean into solving this problem collectively. But I think, we all started carrying TVs around with us and having these very individual experiences and getting on the train and not talking to people when you hop on, or, ordering our coffee while playing a game. And I see this happen all the time, while like playing a game on our phone and texting while we're on the phone to someone. Once you start looking at this, you will see how often people are existing in the world, not addressing anyone around them, doing something on their phone while also multitasking, maybe doing another thing. The lack of presence that we have with each other, I would say, is such a key factor for this. And it's why I'm such a fan of Cuppa and everything it stands for, and such a passionate cheerleader for everything that's coming soon, is because this is exactly what we need to plug back into humanity, the collective, so that we can be unified. And if I then bring that from the other perspective, if you look at the research and the commentary of the smartest people in the country and in the world, we're observing hugely fragmented sense of self, increasing polarization, and our social contract, so like the tapestry that holds the trust in our communities together, is really busting at the seams with some of these challenges.
And that probably leads to my next thing, is like, what's the most dangerous mindset holding us back from making better decisions for future generations? Like, like seeing what we're hearing from the States and the recent election win with Trump, like, does that make you nervous, this rhetoric that is coming through, or does that excite you? And I don't want to get into the political arm of this, right? Because it's not about that, but it's more about the noise that is being generated. Is that some of the most dangerous components that is potentially going to hold us back?
Look, as both someone committed to positive social change and as a, woman, yes, that does concern me. Look, I think one of the most concerning mindsets that I hear about is, whether it's I'm not political, or that's not my role, that's not my job. I am yet to speak to anyone on whatever side of politics, because Foundations for Tomorrow is entirely nonpartisan. We work entirely across the spectrum. I'm yet to speak to anyone who doesn't admit that there is a problem and that there's something we need to address. Thoughts on what to do about it are different. And the thing that is then a concern is that people can say, yes, there's a problem, but it's not my role. Yes, it's a problem, but there's nothing I can do about it. Yes, it's a problem, but the risk to me would be too great. And there are some circumstances which I completely empathize with that. But it's why I think people like me, people like you, people who are watching this are exactly the people, like, if you have the privilege to be able to sit and watch this kind of content, you have the privilege and opportunity to be the kind of person who can step in and do something about it.
And it doesn't have to be massive, right? Because I think most people think that they have to be a game changer like you, who is going into Parliament and showing these, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be that big. You can support people like you. You can rally around people like you. You can share content around it. You can talk to your friends about it. You can talk to your work colleagues. You can think differently about your decisions that you're making inside an organization. There is so many little one moments that you could do. Because, you know, the biggest frustration that I always see, Taylor, is that people are very aware about situations and they do care about it. But what they don't do is show where they're driving the change. Where are they driving the change in their own actions, their own ways that they talk about things, the way they look at things, the way they think about things? Now, long-term thinking, and I want to get into why it's so critical right now with you, Taylor, because there's a few things that have happened in my world in the last 4 years. One, I've learnt more about First Nations wisdom, which has been an absolute freaking game changer for me in just understanding how they think about the future and children's when they're making decisions. The other thing is I've got a couple of kids now, and this is my little daughter on the mug here. That's little Fallon on the mug. Now, I've got a responsibility as a dad to go, well, I'm the one that put them on this earth. I've got a real means to make sure that they're protected. So why is long-term thinking so critical right now in your eyes? I know I've shared it more my personal story and vision of why, but why is it so critical from the mass economic components of everything?
I won't get into necessarily the big economic structures. Number one, because I'm not an economist, but number two, because I think exactly the story that you've told is actually the point. I really, and forgive me, I think you saw me chomping at the bit when you were saying something a bit earlier, wanting to say something, because I think you've just hit the nail on the head so incredibly well, which is, it's a conversation at a time. I say this when I go into organizations. I say, you know, how do you change a culture in an organization? And the research-based genuine answer is you need 15% of the organizational population to commit to the change, and you need them to change the culture one conversation at a time. And it is no different when you're looking at more societal change. We just need enough people to choose that in those micro exchanges, and I say this with vigor to a lot of my wonderful change-making colleagues, which is, you know, yes, you have to stand with passion and vigor and say things must be different, but you also need to be someone who disagrees with you feel they can come to and say, I don't understand. I don't understand why this is a problem. I don't see the issue. Can you help? Because otherwise we just force each other further away and we polarize each other more. So hence why the cover concept is so important. But why is long-term thinking so important now? It's upsetting to say it's always been very important, and we're now just at the point where we as humans are facing into the realities of what it could mean if we don't change our behavior. There's something a climate activist said to me about 4 years ago now that really stuck with me, which is, this isn't about saving the planet. The planet will survive us. This is about saving our humanity, saving what we value in our communities, and saving our way of life, because between polycrisis, converging issues, etc., I won't go into the existential fears of it all. But yeah, the biggest fear that I have is that we will have to face into the fact that we could have done more, that we could have, that we should have. And so I think that's the opportunity that I invite everyone currently watching this to take, which is, I promise you, you can do just a tiny bit more. I promise you, you can have that one more conversation. You can think about, and I had this the other day, I had a conversation 5 months ago with someone. They made a passing comment that was, you know, didn't quite sit right with me. I let it go because I was stressed, I was in a rush, etc. I circled back, I sat down, had a long chat with them about it, and this like beautiful alignment of understanding came from that, which was hard fought. It was an hour and a half long conversation, but I feel like we can all tap into that opportunity to start stitching together that like community tapestry a bit more, because that makes us stronger and more able to face these challenges that frankly are quite scary.
They're scary because everyone's got an opinion now, and those opinions are so widely spread that it can create movements in ripples and other ways. But when you sit eye to eye, like you said, Taylor, and when you sit down and have a conversation with someone and you go in there with curiosity to hear their side of the story and not offer your own opinion, because you know what? Opinions don't deserve any air unless you've been asked, can I have your opinion on this? Besides that, just shut up and listen and try and learn and ask more questions around it. Like, it's pretty freaking simple. And, you know, we've all got to work on it because we've become so dopamine hitted that we just need to move on from conversation so quickly, even in the ones that we're doing in real life, because we just want to move on. We don't spend the time to really understand and learn. And I think there's a lot that we can take out, especially as the years progress now, and really start thinking about, like, what decisions am I making? and how do I bring more people on the journey, because I'm looking at my daughter's eyes every single day, and there is a responsibility for me to be able to do that. Speaking of responsibility, we have an election coming up. You know what? I don't really resonate with politics. Because of the thinking that you've said, because I just go, well, they're just here to get in, and then nothing really changes, and here we go again. And, you know, thanks for the sausage sizzle, but that's all I really want right now, right? How do we actually hold our politicians accountable for the decisions that affect people who aren't even born yet? Like, do they really care? And what policies and global frameworks do you believe have the most potential for that long-term change?
Oh, so many parts of that question. Look, it's such an excellent question, and I like to lead with this embarrassing fact, which is, 5 years ago, just before I started Foundations for Tomorrow, I did not know the difference between a minister and an MP, and I, in many of my initial outreach emails,
Most people don't.
Oh, exactly. So we have 227 members of Parliament, far, far fewer ministers, member of Parliament being an MP. And look, it's an interesting thing to me that the entire structure that defines the direction of our country is something that so many people don't understand. And so many people don't feel invited to participate in. And so many people don't feel that they can make a meaningful difference in. So I think whether it is politics is your jam, whether you get more involved in your organization, community, etc., there are so many paths. So I'm certainly not here to say like politics has to be your pathway. I think if we're looking for like national systemic change, we definitely need this, because from the MPs I have spoken with, and as mentioned, all the way, Nationals, Greens, Independents, Labour, Liberal, etc., been lucky to chat to all of them. And I am yet to meet one who didn't get into the role because they wanted to do better. Okay. And so do they care? I would say yes. Is the system set up to enable them to enact that care effectively? Certainly not, which is why it's not actually a question of do they care? How much are we willing to show them that we care as their voters, as the people who put them in that position? Because as much as there are so many things that get in the way of this, there's so much inequity in the system, etc., and I want to make sure that that's acknowledged, we have the absolute power to define who sits in that seat, because we are the voters. It is skewed, and there's pieces to that as well. And so if we deem it to be critical and important that our long-term future becomes a priority, it's absolutely in our power to do that, I promise you. And there's enough, our volunteer team is filled with staffers who've previously worked in the offices of MPs. And if enough people write in on a specific topic, that MP is going to listen and adjust. That MP, whether it's going to be an exact copy paste of what's in that letter or in that ask, or a way that they can, braid it in with their existing policy platform, they will adjust, because same as the person who's maybe trying not to let their head go under the water, they do want to be re-elected, which is understandable. It's a strong incentive. And so if everyone in their electorate is saying, we will not vote for you unless you demonstrate to us not just the intention to think about the future, because we've had intentions for a long time, but that you're dedicated to shifting the system so that we cannot continue to make short-term decisions. And that's a lot of what the Future Generations policy proposals that I've been working, with the Foundations for Tomorrow team on are about. And we had the Wellbeing of Future Generations bill introduced into federal parliament 9 days ago. And that bill, what it looks like is creating a positive duty for leaders to think about the future. And you would be absolutely forgiven for anyone listening if you think, surely that already exists. Sadly not. Sadly, our leaders have no requirement to think about the long-term future. They have no responsibility or accountability infrastructure for that. And so this bill would introduce that expectation and responsibility, and then set up the infrastructure to enable that to happen once again from that empathetic perspective.
So talk to us about what that means. So let's get to the granular of it.
Yeah.
So let's say this bill, is forming part of a political promise this year, and it's in the system. What does that mean? Like, how does that process then work to ensure that, any new policy that we introduce isn't affecting our, future children?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll use an international example, which is the Welsh have actually had this model since 2015. They introduced their legislation for this back in 2015. It's called the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and it dictates 7 wellbeing goals. So that's across cultural wellbeing, environmental, etc. And it means that every public body has to justify and cross-check their actions against those well-being goals, not one individually, but all 7 of them, to make sure that what they're doing is in the interest of current and future generations. So it's not just about saying in the next 3 years this will deliver X or Y. It's saying across generations and into the future that this can deliver. That's not an unending calculation. So we put the recommendation of 20 to 30 years because, baby steps. Let's move from 3 years to 20 to 30. I think that sounds like an achievement.
I think
But it means that there's checks and balances. And the recommendation that we made is for a commissioner for future generations. Now, we have a lot of commissioners who've had varying success. But for this one, it's all about the soft power. It's all about that empathy-driven approach. Because I can tell you, when I started working in this space, it took me 9 months to map, and I'm sure I missed some, but the existing efforts that government is making to think more long-term, and the amount of people that I spoke to, whether it was in Treasury, Prime Minister and Cabinet, big departments, who did not know the other stuff that was going on in government to try and solve this problem is huge. So a commissioner can kind of help to bring that all together. Think of it like a long-term thinking directorate for the government.
Great. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about what people can do to back this initiative at the end. But I throw back my last comment before about, I just haven't really focused on looking at the political lens because it just drives me insane. It's just a window in my world that I just think's smudged and not clean. But I love this approach. So I'm all in with you on this because I think if we at least have something there that protects future generations, fantastic. But one of the biggest reasons why Cuppers here exists is to get our organisations to start creating change as well. Let's turn our attention to leaders and business leaders inside organisations. Why should business leaders even consider this future generations approach inside their organisation?
So number one, I would say you're already doing a lot. So I don't think you need to worry too much. You are doing a lot to help the movement of how we can better think about the future. But look, why should leaders think about this and what can they do? I would give the why, firstly, in like 3 key messages. So number one, your humanity. It's our responsibility. Like that's my warm, fuzzy answer, which is that duty that we have, my hope that we can embrace some of the incredible leadership that we see in First Nations communities, where they do honor the interests of whether it's, 7 generations to come, the kinship principle, etc. So much there. Number 2, it's just good business. If you look at the data around like number 1, employee retention and engagement, employer branding, customer retention, etc., that honestly by itself, if you remove the moral imperative, is a strong enough argument by itself, is that ability to retain the engagement of staff, of customers, of stakeholders. And then number 3, if we're not thinking about the long term, we can't actually adequately prepare for the potential futures that are coming at us. So it's also a preventative policy opportunity where we say, okay, this is what might happen in the next 10, 20, 30 years. How are we as an organization, both from a sake of operations, sake of purpose, how are we going to navigate those potential futures and be prepared? So whether it is moral imperative, whether it is like immediate customer, employee, etc. engagement, the data is super strong there, or whether it is wanting to safeguard your performance and purpose far into the future, there's some pretty good reasons.
They're great reasons and a great framework for decision making that you can always carry inside your organization. Same like having this, future generation wellbeing, future generations commissioner. Like, is there someone in your business that has that lens as well? In your organization that can actually just think and stop everyone from making decisions before it's too late? What would be, in your eyes, the one shift in leadership culture that could create the biggest impact for future generations?
Do you have 10 hours? Because I could talk about that for so long.
What about 10 minutes?
What is the one shift? Number 1, I think it is talking about it would be the first thing. So over a cuppa, like discussing what is the aspiration of the impact that we want to have and how can we better reconcile our behavior with that? Because I think, when we look at the international examples or when you look at organizational cultural change, the failure to bring people along on the journey is often sort of the death knell of the initiative. So whether that is, I was involved in a culture change initiative that was best in class for what they applied, but they had failed to do the front of house sort of engaging key culture beacons, bringing people on the journey, having ambassadors for the work, etc. And it meant that the work was then quite vulnerable later on when the organization started going through some challenges. The same we've seen in sort of Singapore when they've done their future generations policy work. The fact that they engaged citizens and brought them on the journey has meant that it's like very stable, very strong work, which is fantastic. So number 1, I would start with the conversations. I would then say, like, if you look at the layers of how you can change the culture or behavior, skill sets, mindsets in an organization, there are so many options, whether that's from governance, constitution, through to sort of the policy level, leadership capability, mindset, incentive structures. We simply do not have enough time to go into all the different ways you can do that, but it's a matter of, pick what you are best placed to do, given the nature of your organization. If you're like a champion in an organization and you have control over this specific area, start there, make a proof test case, pilot this notion and roll it out. I'm working with a couple of organizations in Australia at the moment to pilot future generations policy work internally. And we're seeing really fantastic results from really tiny, low-cost pilots, whether that is just allocating someone in strategy meetings whose only job is to pose questions about the long-term impacts of the choices being made. Or it's like a pre-briefing that does the same thing. Whether it is, intergenerational collaboration, there's so many small things that do not cost that much time or resources, and that you can just start and see how it lands with people.
A very simple approach and a very good approach just to even start the conversation. So I love that. Obviously, getting Taylor into your organization as well will definitely benefit, and we'll pass on those details at the end of the show. But what gives you most hope for the future despite the challenges we face, Taylor?
What gives me most hope is that I am yet to meet a leader who doesn't want this. And I think that we are suffering from complacency and paralysis, not a lack of capability to do something about it. I'm actually overwhelmingly confident that we can solve the problems that we face. It's just a matter of us making people feel that there are enough other people stepping forward that it then becomes sort of a critical mass point. And I actually do not think that we are that far away from that being possible. It is more often than not that I'm in conversation with people who have thoughts, have passions, have ideas of how to do this, and they're waiting for permission, waiting for there to be an opportunity. So if exactly with conversations like this, with the support that CUP is giving and so many other organizations are stepping in, we can just start to get that momentum going, I really have a huge amount of confidence that we can see some of the shifts that we really need quite quickly.
Love that. And one of the things and actions that you can do today is visit this website. Can you just explain a little bit more about what's one thing that people can do today, Taylor, and the website itself?
Absolutely. So this is the For Our Future website. It's the campaign that's been launched by Foundations for Tomorrow, but is now backed by the entire Intergenerational Fairness Coalition, includes Plan International, Foundation for Young Australians. And we have the petition, which is Ask for the Bill, which is both about ask for the bill, like what is the costs on our future of decisions for today? Let's look at the receipt. Let's see what are the costs that we're looking at. But also the bill for the well-being of future generations. It was introduced into Parliament. It will only become law if government sees that they can't not do it. So joining this website, signing the petition, you'll also then be kept updated on our other work to try and see how quickly can we make it that our leaders actually are held responsible for our long-term future, because at the moment it's not the case. So signing the petition, signing up to stay updated, and as Luke said, absolutely reaching out if you are curious to learn more about what can be done beyond that.
What's the website?
www.forourfuturecampaign.org. Thank you for asking.
We're going to be sending out the link after this as well. Sorry, my chat room stopped because my internet's playing up a little bit, so I couldn't put it in the chat room today. But everyone who has registered for this and is watching today, and those that are watching the replay, you'll see it in the show notes. In fact, you can actually go and have a look in the show notes now, and you'll be able to click on that link to do it. This is not the end of our conversation, Taylor. In fact, I'm handing you the microphone, and you're going to be hosting the For Our Future show this year. So what do you hope where those audience members who engage today and those that engage in the future, what do you want to take people through in this show format?
Oh, I'm so excited. I want to continue what I've been fortunate enough to do over the last 5 years, whether it's leaders from Lithuania, Botswana, Singapore, sit down with leaders and talk to them and understand what are the practical tools that they have, what are they doing that's working, learning from their wisdom, because exactly as you said, it's all about us reconnecting as community, sharing knowledge, and seeing how we can sort of go further together. So I'm excited to learn a bunch along the way, and selfishly, I'll be curating the guest list so that it's people that I am just tantalizingly excited to learn how their brain works, how they see us tackling these challenges. And the mindset I'll be bringing to this is, how do we make it real? How do we make it practical? And how do we make it something that in every day you could take a little nugget and start applying it?
Absolutely love it. We're going to be sending out who the new guests are in the series coming up very soon. So please make sure that you check your inboxes when we send out those emails around this show for our future. Taylor, it's been absolutely incredible holding space with you today. Again, I've just learned a lot just by spending the time having a cuppa and just having this great chat. What's the final comment that you want to leave people with today? Is there anything you want to leave people before we head off?
My final comment would be, if you've chosen to watch through until this point, I think it means that it's like part of you or a voice within you that feels there's something you can be doing. And I just want to say, you're right, there absolutely is. And to just challenge yourself to do the one first thing. Like, I ended up where I am now because I was like, oh, I'll speak to this person. I'll just ask this question. And it snowballed. I don't say that to scare you. It doesn't mean that you'll end up with an obsessive hobby that takes up a lot of time, but just do the one small thing. The fact that you turned up and watched this means that I think part of you wants to. So that would be my encouragement.
Absolutely fantastic, Taylor. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of Cuppa. That was our first 4 Hours Future show. There'll be plenty more, plenty of great guests, as Taylor's been mentioning, and we can't wait to take you on that journey itself. We are all in control of our future. We just need to start showing the actions that we need to take in place to protect ourselves and our children. That is it, everyone. I really do appreciate your time today. Please share any feedback with us on cuppa.tv, and we'll be back with you shortly. That is it, everyone. Really do appreciate your time. Chat to you later. Bye.